Hello guys, good morning. This is your Sir Kevin again, here today to deliver to you another accounting tutorial discussion on business combination. And today we're going to talk about a little something on acquisition of ordinary shares. We are going to do so by answering some true or false questions regarding the circumstances that surround acquisition of ordinary shares. So here goes. The problem goes about like this. Sheldon Corporation acquired all of Missy Company's 10,000 ordinary shares. So here are the two parties of the company. Sheldon acquires all 10,000 ordinary shares of Missy by paying 1 million cash. So itong 1 million cash na to, that is our acquisition cost if we are going to account under Sheldon's point of view, the acquirer, in which all business combinations naman is accounted for by the acquirer. The net assets of Missy at fair value were 1,200,000. So you have that. Ito lang po ang given. 1 million acquisition cost and 1,200,000 net assets. The acquisition cost is for all 10,000 outstanding ordinary shares. So let's answer a few questions. True or false? After the acquisition, Sheldon Corporation has control over the business of Missy Company. So, true or false? Number one, your answer to that question is true. Okay, in order to appreciate this, you must have a basic understanding of how corporations operate. In that, when a corporation is established, it is authorized to issue ordinary shares. And these ordinary shares actually are evidence of ownership. Like, kung sino man ang may hawak ng ordinary shares na to, they are known as our shareholders. Those shareholders actually own the company. So, if you would follow that up into this problem, Sheldon acquired Macy's ordinary shares, right? So, Sheldon did so by talking to the current shareholders. So, ganito ang nangyari. Sheldon, kinausap niya lahat ng shareholders and the shareholders of Missy agreed to sell all the shares to Sheldon. So, right now, ang ang proof of ownership or ang ordinary shares po ay na-transfer to Sheldon. Sheldon now is the only shareholder of Missy Company. Yes, a corporation can be a shareholder of another corporation because shares, ordinary shares are also accounted for as investments, equity instruments. So here, Sheldon has control over the business of Missy Company because basically, if you are a majority shareholder, you get to decide everything that concerns ownership. Like for example, the election of your board of directors. Like for example, the decision whether to close down a business, the decision to expand. They are done so in a shareholders meeting. And if you have the control over who sits in the board of directors, ikaw din ang may control kung sino ang i-appoint into management. And basically, management will control the operations of the company. So, ikaw na. Si Sheldon na po ang magko-control over the business of Missy. So, the first question, that's true. In an acquisition of ordinary shares. Let's go to the second question. Missy will continue to operate as a separate legal entity. Okay. Missy Company. Do you continue to operate as a separate legal entity? Yes or no? Kasi in essence, sir, Sheldon already acquired Missy, so maybe Missy will be merged into Sheldon? Maybe? Answer, if this was acquisition of net assets, Missy would probably have been dissolved. Like in most acquisition of net assets. Kasi kapag binili ang net assets, most probably wala ka ng business na maipapatuloy, di ba? Pero this time, ang binili po is the ordinary shares. And take note, this is what happens. The only thing that changed in Missy Company is the owner. The business did not stop, the employees were not fired, the assets were not transferred, the operations were not halted, and basically everything else is still in place. Ang nagbago lang po dito is that Missy Company has changed ownership. Kasi po, ang old shareholders ni Missy, binenta nila ang ownership nila to Sheldon. That being the only case, it does not necessarily mean na mag-stop na sa pag-operate ng business si Missy. Okay? Magpapatuloy pa rin siya as Missy Company. And corporations are separate legal entities. That means this statement number 2 is true. Okay? Missy Company will still continue to operate as a separate legal entity despite the fact na si Sheldon na ang owner ni Missy. Third question. Missy Company is a subsidiary of Sheldon Corporation. Okay. In acquisition of ordinary shares, this mode of business combination, it leads to what we call parent and subsidiary relationship. A parent is a corporation or a company who has control over the business of another company. This time, Sheldon has control over Missy. Sheldon is known as the parent. And Missy now is a subsidiary under the control of Sheldon. So that should make statement number 3 also true. So there you have it. 1, 2, 3. All of them are true. Let's go to statement number 4. Sheldon Corporation and Missy Company are still considered as separate economic entities. Okay. Separate economic entities. IFRS 10 consolidated financial statements view the parent and subsidiary as one economic entity. Technically, one economic entity. Although they are separate legal entities, when it comes to taxation, when it comes to Securities and Exchange Commission reporting, they will report as one. Ang ibig sabihin po nito, si Sheldon Corporation magpre-prepare ng financial statements niya, di ba? And Missy Company, being a separate corporation, will also prepare a set of financial statements. However, for BIR purposes, taxation purposes, those financial statements must be merged into one. Okay? And when I say merged into one, that means they are going to be prepared in what we call consolidated financial statements. So I just spoiled the fact that there is something related to consolidated financial statement on number 6. And yes, on number 6, Sheldon Corporation will be required to prepare consolidated financial statements. And basically, in a nutshell, that is Sheldon's separate financial statement combined with Missy's separate financial statement into one consolidated financial statements. So, number 6 is true. But let's go back to number 4. Number 4, Sheldon Corporation and Missy Company are still considered as separate economic entities. Now, that statement is false. Okay? Technically, everything Missy owns is owned by Sheldon. Lahat ng nakapangalan kay Missy is accruing to the benefit of Sheldon. All the income that Missy accrues may be declared as a dividend which Sheldon will receive. All losses that Missy suffers will also affect or impact Sheldon in a way na ang investment niya is losing. Okay? Missy Company is now an investment of Sheldon. Sheldon Corporation paid $1 million directly to Missy Company. True or false? Number 5. In an acquisition of ordinary shares, the transaction is not actually between Missy Company and Sheldon Company. Well, to explain this, number 5, you have to know kung sino ang parties in the acquisition. Actually, what happens here is Sheldon Corporation acquired all of Missy Company's shares outstanding, not directly from Missy Company. Rather, binili ni Sheldon ang ordinary shares from existing shareholders. So if I am going to do a makeshift illustration, let's say this is Sheldon Company and this is Missy Company. The 1 million payment does not go to Missy. Okay? Rather, the 1 million payment will go to the shareholders that are currently Missy's owners. Kasi po sila ang may-ari ng ordinary shares. And they are the ones selling the shares to Sheldon. The shares are not being sold by Missy because they have already been issued prior. They are already outstanding. So, the transaction in acquisition of ordinary shares is not company to company. Rather, it is acquirer to shareholder. Okay? So, ang payment po hindi natanggap ni Missy. Missy will not be debiting 1 million in this transaction. Rather, the the 1 million is actually received by the shareholders. That makes number 5 false. Okay? Let's go to our last requirement. The acquisition will result in an increase of 200,000 in the retained earnings of Sheldon Corporation's separate financial statements. Now, this statement is actually pertaining to goodwill computation. And from our previous lessons, you would know that goodwill computation is simply acquisition cost minus FINA. FINA, fair value of identifiable net assets, actually given silang dalawa, wherein the acquisition cost is 1 million and the FINA is already given at 1,200,000. So if I would compare this, the FINA is actually greater than acquisition cost, which results to a 200,000 gain on bargain purchase. Now, what will happen to this gain on bargain purchase? That gain on bargain purchase will actually be added to the consolidated financial statements retained earnings.